What if I told you that every night when you lay your head on your pillow, you're actually stepping into the most powerful manifestation chamber known to humanity? That while your body rests, your subconscious mind becomes a divine workshop where miracles are not just possible, but inevitable. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Tonight, something extraordinary is about to happen. As you prepare for sleep, you're not simply ending another day. You're entering what Florence Scovel Shinn called a sacred space prepared by infinite spirit, where the very gates of wealth swing open and divine provision flows without a single obstruction. Has this ever happened to you? You've gone to bed worried about money, stressed about bills, anxious about your financial future, only to wake up with an inexplicable sense of peace, or perhaps even discover an unexpected opportunity waiting in your inbox. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual law in action. While the world sleeps, while your conscious mind finally quiets its endless chatter of doubt and limitation, your subconscious becomes what I like to call the divine receiver, completely open, utterly receptive, and perfectly aligned with the frequency of abundance that governs the entire universe. You see, most people approach sleep as merely a biological necessity, a time for physical restoration. But what you're about to discover might surprise you. Sleep is actually your most sacred appointment with wealth itself. Not the kind of wealth that comes through grinding and striving, but the effortless abundance that flows when you align with spiritual law. Tonight, we're going to explore how ancient wisdom meets modern manifestation, how the simple act of listening to specific abundance affirmations while you sleep can literally reprogram your financial reality at the deepest level. We're talking about transforming not just your bank account, but your entire relationship with money, prosperity, and your own divine worth. The truth is, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. It simply accepts whatever information you consistently feed it. And during those precious hours of sleep, when your logical mind stops interfering, when your doubts finally quiet down, that's when the magic happens. That's when wealth, consciousness gets installed like software into the hard drive of your soul. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this over a century ago when she wrote about the power of the sleeping state to magnetize miracles. She knew that when you enter what she called this holy appointment with the law of abundance, you're not just hoping for change, you're commanding it through the divine authority of your aligned subconscious mind. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to transform not just your sleep, but your entire financial destiny. We're about to dive deep into the sacred mechanics of overnight abundance, where every affirmation becomes a seed planted in the fertile soil of infinite possibility. If these revelations open something within you, I'd love to have you subscribe. This channel is where we explore the deep connections between consciousness and wealth that most people never discover. Think about this for a moment. You didn't stumble upon this message by accident. Your presence here right now, at this exact moment in your life, is part of what spiritual teachers call a divine pattern. There's something profound happening behind the scenes of your journey, something that goes far beyond mere coincidence or random chance. The fact that you're here, listening to these words about abundance and transformation, reveals that you're being guided toward a perfect realignment with universal law. Here's a hidden truth that most people never discover. Every delay you've experienced, every financial setback that left you questioning your worth, every moment when prosperity seemed just out of reach, none of it was punishment. It was preparation. The universe has been orchestrating your readiness for this very moment of awakening. You see, Spirit has never withheld good from you. Not once. Not ever. All the supply you've been seeking, all the health you've been praying for, all the love and success that feels so distant, it's already completed in divine mind. It already bears your name. It's already vibrating toward you at frequencies beyond what your physical senses can detect. But here's where the real revelation begins to unfold. Your subconscious mind has been programmed by years of worldly conditioning to expect struggle, to anticipate scarcity, to brace for disappointment. These aren't your true thoughts. They're inherited patterns, learned behaviors, societal imprints that have created invisible barriers between you and your natural birthright of abundance. During sleep, something miraculous happens. These barriers begin to dissolve. Your conscious mind, with all its learned limitations and fearful projections, finally steps aside. Your subconscious becomes like fertile ground, ready to receive new seeds of possibility. And when you feed it the right vibrations, the right frequencies, the right spiritual truths during those sacred hours, transformation occurs at the deepest, cellular level. The ancient mystics understood this process intimately. They knew that true manifestation doesn't happen through force or desperate effort, but through divine alignment. When you surrender into sleep while listening to abundance affirmations, you're not just hoping for change, you're participating in the very mechanics of creation itself. Your brain waves shift into theta and delta frequencies, the same states that shamans and spiritual masters have accessed for millennia to perform what the world calls miracles. In these states, your mind becomes incredibly receptive to new programming. Every word of abundance you hear begins to overwrite decades of scarcity programming. Every affirmation of wealth starts dissolving the invisible contracts you unknowingly signed with limitation. This isn't positive thinking or wishful imagination. This is sacred science. Neuroscience now confirms what spiritual teachers have known for centuries, that repetitive exposure to specific frequencies and affirmations during sleep can literally rewire your neural pathways, creating new thought patterns that naturally attract different outcomes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation process, because understanding the mechanics behind overnight abundance programming will revolutionize not just how you sleep, but how you relate to money, success, and your own infinite potential. The impact of what happens during those 8 hours of divine programming extends far beyond the bedroom. It shapes your decisions, influences your actions, and ultimately determines the trajectory of your entire financial destiny. What's fascinating is that beneath all the surface turbulence of your financial life, the bills, the budgets, the banking alerts, there flows what spiritual masters have called the golden river of prosperity. This isn't metaphorical language. It's a living reality that exists beyond the physical realm. This river has been flowing beneath your life since the moment you were born, constant and unending, never diminished by any appearance of lack or struggle you might be experiencing. Most people live their entire lives walking on dry ground, completely unaware that just beneath their feet flows an infinite stream of divine abundance. They make decisions based on scarcity, create strategies rooted in fear, and exhaust themselves trying to squeeze water from stones, all while standing directly above the most abundant source of prosperity in existence. The revelation that changes everything is this: you don't need to create abundance. You don't need to attract it, manifest it, or earn it through some complex spiritual gymnastics. You simply need to dip into what's already flowing. You need to step down from the harsh terrain of struggle and immerse yourself in the golden current that has been waiting for your recognition all along. During sleep, when your analytical mind stops building dams of doubt and limitation, this river naturally begins to surface. Your subconscious becomes like a divining rod, naturally drawn to the wealth frequency that's been calling your name. This is why some people wake up with million-dollar ideas, why breakthrough solutions appear in dreams, why morning inspiration often carries the seeds of life-changing transformation. But here's where the journey takes a profound turn. As you allow yourself to recognize this underlying prosperity, you begin to enter what can only be described as a sanctuary, not a physical place, but a state of consciousness where divine law reigns supreme. In this inner sanctuary, something magical happens. Your spoken word begins to merge with faith in ways that create what mystics call radiant decrees. These aren't ordinary affirmations or wishful thinking. When you speak from this sanctuary state during sleep programming, your words carry the authority of spiritual law itself. They become living commands that summon wealth from every corner of creation. Behind the scenes of the visible world, invisible forces begin responding to your voice with the same obedience that water shows to gravity. This process reveals the hidden mechanics of true manifestation. Most people try to create change from the outside in, working harder, pushing against circumstances, forcing outcomes through will and effort. But the sanctuary approach works from the inside out, transforming the fundamental frequencies that determine what flows into your experience. If these teachings resonated with your soul tonight, a simple like tells me this message found the right person and helps others discover these same abundant secrets. Think about the most successful people you know, not just financially, but those who seem to navigate life with an almost effortless grace. What you're witnessing isn't luck or privilege, but the natural result of someone whose inner sanctuary has been activated. They make decisions from abundance rather than scarcity. Their mindset operates from a place where limitation isn't even considered as a viable option. The impact of this shift extends into every area of life because prosperity isn't just about money. It's about the unlimited nature of divine supply itself. When you align with this golden river, you don't just attract financial abundance. You begin experiencing abundance in relationships, health, creativity, opportunities, and joy. Now, I want to reveal the specific techniques that activate this sanctuary state during sleep, because understanding how to consciously enter this divine realm transforms your 8 hours of rest into 8 hours of active wealth programming. The revelations that emerge from this practice often surprise people with their simplicity and their power. The moment you understand that you're stepping into what Scripture calls the sleep of the beloved, everything shifts. This isn't the restless tossing and turning of those burdened by worry, nor the shallow rest of minds trapped in cycles of anxiety. This is the blessed, holy sleep of someone who has finally recognized their true identity, one who is cradled in the invisible arms of infinite love and abundance. Behind the scenes of ordinary consciousness lies this profound truth. You are counted among the beloved, not because of what you've accomplished or failed to accomplish, not because of your bank balance or your mistakes, but simply because of who you are at the deepest level. When this recognition dawns, your entire relationship with sleep transforms from a mere biological function into a sacred communion with divine source. The impact of this shift in perspective is immediate and powerful. Your nervous system begins to release decades of accumulated tension. Your breath naturally deepens. That chronic background anxiety about money, about security, about whether you're doing enough or being enough, starts to dissolve into something far more supportive. A gentle knowing that you are held, you are seen, and you are provided for. This is where the hidden mechanics of true abundance begin to reveal themselves. Gratitude doesn't become something you have to manufacture or perform. It rises naturally from your heart, like a spring bubbling up from deep underground. You begin to recognize the safety that has always surrounded you, the love that has never abandoned you, the provision that has consistently found ways to reach you even in your darkest moments. The revelation here transforms your entire approach to manifestation. Most people exhaust themselves trying to convince the universe of their worthiness, pleading and straining to prove they deserve good things. But when you understand your beloved status, you realize that none of that struggle was ever necessary. You don't have to earn divine love. You simply receive it by being present to what's already true. This shift in mindset creates what I call a receptive frequency. Instead of broadcasting desperation or need, your energy field begins emanating a quiet confidence that abundance is natural, that provision is already handled, that everything you require is already on its way. This frequency acts like a beacon in the spiritual realm, drawing to you the very things you've been chasing with so much effort. During sleep, when you rest in this awareness of being beloved, your subconscious receives what can only be described as divine downloads. Solutions appear not through mental gymnastics, but through gentle inspiration. Opportunities align not through networking and manipulation, but through what feels like graceful synchronicity. Money flows not through desperate hustle, but through channels that seem to open effortlessly. The journey from striving to receiving represents one of the most profound transformations available to human consciousness. It's the difference between swimming upstream against a powerful current and finally turning around to discover you've been fighting the very force that wanted to carry you home. When you make decisions from this place of recognized belovedness, every choice becomes an expression of abundance rather than a hedge against scarcity. What's particularly fascinating is how this inner shift begins to reshape your external world almost immediately. People respond differently to your energy. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources that seemed scarce begin appearing from unexpected directions. It's as if the entire universe conspires to confirm what you finally allowed yourself to believe, that you are worthy of good things, that prosperity is your natural state, that abundance is not something you achieve, but something you remember. Now I want to explore how this foundation of gratitude and belovedness becomes the launching pad for specific abundance programming techniques that work while you sleep. Because when these principles combine with targeted affirmations, the results often exceed what people thought was possible. When you truly embrace your beloved status and allow gratitude to flow naturally, something extraordinary begins to unfold. What most people experience as ordinary sleep transforms into what can only be called a night of miracles. This isn't poetic language. This is the actual mechanics of how divine intelligence operates when your consciousness becomes receptive to its highest possibilities. Behind the scenes, while your physical body rests, an incredible conspiracy begins to take shape. The night itself, those 8 hours of apparent inactivity, becomes your ally, working in partnership with divine intelligence to reshape your consciousness at the deepest levels. Every limiting belief you've carried, every financial story that has kept you small, every inherited pattern of scarcity begins to dissolve under the gentle but persistent influence of spiritual truth. This process reveals one of the most profound hidden truths about manifestation. Transformation doesn't require struggle or force. When you align with the natural rhythms of consciousness, change happens as naturally as a flower blooming or a river flowing toward the sea. Your sleeping mind becomes like soft clay in the hands of divine wisdom, ready to be reshaped into patterns that reflect your true abundance. The impact of this nightly transformation extends far beyond what happens in your bedroom. As limitations get rewritten in the depths of your subconscious, your waking decisions begin to shift. You find yourself making choices from confidence rather than fear. Opportunities that once seemed impossible start feeling inevitable. Your entire relationship with money begins operating from a completely different paradigm. What's particularly fascinating is how this process impresses upon your sleeping mind something that changes everything. The recognition that wealth is not something you have to earn, achieve, or deserve, but something you inherit simply by virtue of who you are. Wealth is your birthright, encoded into the very fabric of your spiritual DNA, waiting only for your consciousness to become spacious enough to receive it. This is where the journey takes a remarkable turn toward the mystical. As your mind opens to these deeper truths, you begin to access what can only be described as visionary experiences. Many people report seeing what appears to be a great celestial door during this process, not with their physical eyes, but with the inner sight that awakens when consciousness expands beyond ordinary limitations. This door glows with symbols of infinite supply, ancient and eternal markings that speak directly to the soul's understanding of abundance. It's as if the universe itself is revealing its secret architecture, showing you the divine blueprints that govern prosperity and manifestation. Beyond this threshold, many glimpse rivers of gold sparkling in heaven's favor, flowing endlessly, never diminished, never restricted, always abundant. These aren't hallucinations or wishful fantasies. They're glimpses into what mystics have called the Akashic realm, the dimension where all possibilities exist in their perfected form, waiting to manifest into physical reality. When your consciousness touches this level during sleep programming, you're not just listening to affirmations, you're connecting with the source code of abundance itself. The revelations that emerge from these experiences often surprise people with their clarity and practical impact. You might wake up with a business idea that seems to have downloaded fully formed. Financial solutions that eluded you for months suddenly become obvious. People and opportunities begin appearing in your life with perfect timing, as if orchestrated by an invisible intelligence that sees the bigger picture. Now, I want to explore how you can consciously prepare your mind to receive these profound downloads and visions. Because understanding the specific techniques that open this celestial doorway transforms sleep from passive rest into active spiritual programming. The moment you recognize that celestial doorway, something profound shifts in your understanding of how abundance actually works. Most people spend their entire lives searching for the key to prosperity in external circumstances. Better jobs, perfect timing, lucky breaks, or complex strategies. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. You've been carrying the key with you all along, and it's not located where you think it is. The key to abundance doesn't rest in your hands through what you do or how hard you work. It doesn't depend on your education, your connections, or your circumstances. The real key lies upon your tongue and within your faith. Every word you speak, especially during those sacred hours when your conscious mind steps aside, carries the power to swing wide the doors that seemed permanently locked. This revelation transforms your entire approach to manifestation. Instead of striving and struggling to force doors open through external effort, you begin to understand that your voice itself is the master key. When you speak from faith during sleep programming, when your words align with divine truth rather than worldly limitation, something extraordinary happens behind the scenes of reality. The door doesn't just crack open, it swings wide with such force that rivers of abundance pour forth directly into your dreams. These aren't metaphorical rivers. People who practice this consistently report waking up with specific financial guidance, business ideas that seem to download complete with implementation steps, and an inner knowing about money decisions that proves remarkably accurate. Your subconscious, freed from the constraints of logical doubt, becomes a direct conduit for divine intelligence about prosperity. The impact of this shift extends into every area of your financial life. Your relationship with money transforms from one of anxiety and scarcity to one of collaboration and flow. You begin making decisions not from fear of loss, but from expectation of increase. Your mindset naturally gravitates toward opportunities rather than obstacles, toward possibilities rather than problems. But here's where the journey takes perhaps its most beautiful turn. As you continue practicing this tongue and faith approach to abundance, you begin to realize something that changes everything about how you see yourself in relation to prosperity. You're no longer standing outside the banquet hall of divine provision, pressing your face against the glass, wondering if you'll ever be invited inside. You're already seated at the table. This isn't a future promise or a distant possibility. Right now, in this moment, your cup is running over with blessings you haven't even noticed yet. You're already drinking deeply of what mystics call the eternal feast of provision, that inexhaustible source of divine supply that has been sustaining you, guiding you, and preparing abundance for you, even during seasons when you felt forgotten or overlooked. The transformation from outsider to honored guest happens not through earning or deserving, but through recognition. When you finally see that the feast has been spread for you all along, when you understand that your name was engraved on that chair before you were born, everything about your energy changes. You stop approaching life from desperation and start moving from celebration. This shift in identity, from seeker to receiver, from beggar to beloved, from outsider to honored guest, creates what can only be described as a magnetic field around your life. Resources that were invisible suddenly become apparent. People begin offering help without being asked. Opportunities align in ways that feel almost choreographed by an unseen intelligence. Now, I want to reveal the specific words and phrases that activate this banquet hall consciousness during sleep. Because when you know exactly how to speak as one who is already seated at the table of abundance, Your entire financial reality begins reorganizing itself to match this inner recognition of your true position. When you truly embrace your position at the table of divine provision, when you recognize that your chair has been waiting for you all along, something monumentally shifts in your consciousness. This becomes the night you stop, wandering in what can only be described as the desert of lack, that barren landscape where so many people spend their entire lives, convinced that scarcity is normal, that struggle is necessary, that abundance is reserved for others. Behind the scenes of this transformation lies a profound geographical shift in consciousness. You're not just changing your thoughts about money, you're literally migrating from one spiritual territory to another. The desert of lack, with its mirages of false hope and its endless cycles of thirst, gives way to the promised land of spiritual abundance, where rivers flow freely and trees bear fruit in every season. This isn't gradual progress or slow improvement. This is Exodus, a complete departure from the old paradigm into a realm where you are never again separated from your good. The impact of this shift reverberates through every decision you make, every relationship you build, every opportunity you encounter. You begin operating from a completely different set of assumptions about what's possible for your life. The hidden truth that makes this transformation possible lies in understanding how spiritual power actually operates during sleep. Most people underestimate the profound shifts happening in consciousness during those 8 hours of apparent rest. They see sleep as downtime, as a break from productivity, as mere biological maintenance. But here's what changes everything. In sleep, your power is magnified beyond measure. Think about what happens when your conscious mind finally steps aside. All those mental barriers you've built through years of conditioning, all those logical arguments against abundance, all those reasonable explanations for why prosperity might not be possible for you, they dissolve into the background. Your subconscious mind stands wide open like the most fertile soil imaginable, ready to receive whatever seeds you choose to plant. This is where the journey takes a fascinating turn into the mechanics of transformation itself. During waking hours, your conscious mind acts like a vigilant gatekeeper, filtering information, questioning possibilities, maintaining the status quo through doubt and analysis. But when sleep arrives, this gatekeeper finally takes a break, and your subconscious becomes what spiritual teachers call heavenly soil, completely receptive, utterly accepting, ready to grow whatever you plant there. The revelations that emerge from understanding this process are staggering. Every limitation you've accepted, every financial story that has kept you trapped, every inherited belief about money and worthiness, none of these exist in your subconscious as fixed reality. They exist only as patterns, as repeated impressions, as seeds that were planted when your conscious defenses were down. And just as those limiting patterns were installed through repetition, they can be completely overwritten through intentional spiritual programming. What's particularly powerful is how this programming bypasses all the mental resistance that normally sabotages manifestation efforts. The practice itself is beautifully simple, yet remarkably powerful. Money, I now speak to you. You are divine substance, and you obey my voice. But the timing and consistency of this declaration is what creates lasting transformation rather than temporary improvement. You speak these words daily before looking at numbers that might trigger old patterns of scarcity thinking, before signing contracts that might activate fear about commitment, before checking balances that could stir up anxiety about sufficiency. The impact of this consistent daily practice creates what can only be described as a complete retraining of your nervous system around financial interaction. Instead of your body automatically tensing when money topics arise, your physiology begins to associate financial engagement with spiritual authority and expected obedience. Instead of your mind immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios when bills arrive, your consciousness automatically shifts into command mode, where solutions are expected and resources are assumed to be available. The journey of establishing this daily command practice transforms every financial touchpoint from potential stress into opportunity for spiritual demonstration. Your banking app becomes a place where you exercise divine authority rather than check on whether you have enough. Your business negotiations flow from the confidence of someone who knows money moves in response to proper spiritual direction rather than just market forces and human manipulation. What's particularly powerful about speaking to money as divine substance before every financial interaction is how it prevents the unconscious agreements with limitation that sabotage so many people's abundance efforts. When you automatically establish your spiritual authority before looking at numbers or making money decisions, you're creating a protective field of consciousness that prevents fear-based reactions from taking root and growing into self-fulfilling prophecies. Now, I want to explore how this daily command practice creates compound effects that build spiritual authority over time, because understanding the cumulative power of consistent financial dominion will motivate you to maintain this practice even when immediate results aren't obvious. When you breathe with divine authority, when you establish this daily command practice of speaking directly to money as obedient divine substance before every financial interaction, you create a foundation of spiritual dominion that naturally leads to one of the most liberating transformations in modern abundance work: the complete destruction of what can only be called the idol of hustle. For too long, our culture has worshipped at the altar of grinding effort, teaching people that money must be earned through sweat, stress, and the brutal sacrifice of peace for productivity. This hustle mentality has become so deeply embedded in collective consciousness that many people feel guilty about wanting abundance to come easily, believing that struggle somehow makes them more deserving of prosperity, or that effortless manifestation indicates spiritual laziness. Behind the scenes of this hustle worship lies a profound misunderstanding of how divine law actually operates in the realm of abundance. The truth that changes everything is this: money flows according to spiritual alignment, not human exhaustion. Wealth responds to vibrational authority, not frantic activity. Prosperity gravitates toward consciousness that operates from peace and certainty rather than consciousness driven by fear and desperation. The hidden revelation about destroying this hustle idol is that most people have been working against themselves without realizing it. Every time they approach money-making from anxiety and urgency, they create resistance that blocks the very flow they're trying to generate. Every time they sacrifice inner peace for outer productivity, they disconnect from the spiritual frequency that naturally attracts abundance. Every time they choose stress over trust, they move further away from the effortless demonstration that comes through divine alignment. This transformation from hustle to harmony requires a complete rewiring of the language patterns that have been programming scarcity into daily speech. Instead of saying, "I have to hustle harder to make money," you begin to declare, "I align with divine flow and money comes with ease." Instead of glorifying exhaustion with phrases like "grinding for success," you start honoring spiritual rhythm with statements like, "I work from inspiration and rest in divine timing." The impact of this language replacement creates what can only be described as a complete nervous system makeover around abundance. Your body begins to associate money-making with peace rather than stress, with flow rather than force, with trust rather than terror. Your decisions start coming from a place of inner wisdom rather than outer pressure. Your opportunities begin aligning with your natural gifts and interests rather than requiring you to sacrifice your well-being for financial gain. The journey of replacing bondage language with freedom language transforms not just how you speak about money, but how you actually experience the process of creating prosperity. When you eliminate phrases that glorify struggle and substitute them with words that honor ease, your subconscious begins to believe that abundance can come through joy rather than suffering, through alignment rather than exhaustion, through spiritual law rather than human force. What's particularly powerful about this linguistic transformation is how it changes your relationship with time and productivity. Instead of feeling like you're racing against some invisible clock that demands constant motion, you begin to move in harmony with divine timing that knows exactly when to act and when to rest. Instead of measuring your worth by how busy you appear, you start evaluating your effectiveness by how aligned you feel with your highest good. This shift from hustle language to harmony language naturally creates what mystics call effortless manifestation, a state where opportunities, resources, and income streams begin appearing through synchronicity rather than strain, through inspiration rather than desperation, through divine orchestration rather than human manipulation. Now, I want to explore how this elimination of hustle mentality opens the door to what Florence Scovel Shinn called working under grace, because understanding how to operate from spiritual ease rather than human effort will revolutionize not just your financial results, but your entire quality of life. When you choose harmony over hustle, when you're ready to destroy that false idol of grinding effort and step into effortless abundance through spiritual alignment rather than physical exhaustion, you discover something that will fundamentally transform not just how you make money, but how you experience the entire process of creating prosperity in your life. The grinding myth that money must be made through sweat and exhaustion represents one of the deepest forms of spiritual amnesia plaguing modern consciousness. This isn't divine law operating in your life. This is human programming inherited from generations who forgot their true spiritual authority and began believing that suffering somehow sanctifies abundance, that struggle proves worthiness, that exhaustion demonstrates dedication to success. Behind the scenes of this programming lies a tragic misunderstanding of how divine intelligence actually operates in the material world. When you serve hustle instead of harmony, when you prioritize frantic activity over spiritual alignment, you're essentially telling the universe that you don't trust its ability to orchestrate perfect timing and effortless opportunities on your behalf. You're operating from the false belief that God needs your anxiety to make things work, rather than your faith to allow them to unfold. The transformation that occurs when you completely replace bondage language with freedom language creates immediate shifts in both your inner experience and your outer results. Instead of declaring, "I have to hustle harder to make this work," you begin to affirm, "I align with divine flow and allow perfect opportunities to find me." Instead of saying, "I need to grind until I break through," you start proclaiming, "I rest in divine timing and money comes through grace, not through distress." This linguistic shift reveals a profound truth about how abundance actually manifests. Money responds to vibration, not calculation. It flows toward consciousness that operates from peace and certainty rather than consciousness driven by mathematical analysis and strategic manipulation. When you align with divine flow instead of forcing outcomes through human effort, you tap into intelligence that sees connections and possibilities completely invisible to the worried mind. The hidden power of serving harmony instead of hustle lies in how it changes your entire decision-making process around money and opportunities. Instead of evaluating every possibility through the lens of, "How hard will I have to work for this?" you begin to assess options based on, "How aligned does this feel with my highest good?" Instead of choosing paths that require the most sacrifice and struggle, you start gravitating toward routes that feel expansive, joyful, and sustainable. This shift from effort-based to alignment-based abundance creates what can only be described as a complete reversal in how opportunities present themselves to you. When you were operating from hustle consciousness, you attracted situations that required maximum effort for minimum return because your vibration was broadcasting, "I believe in difficulty." But when you align with harmony consciousness, you begin magnetizing circumstances that offer maximum return for minimal effort because you're now broadcasting, "I believe in divine efficiency." The journey of learning to serve harmony rather than hustle often surprises people with how quickly their external circumstances begin to mirror their internal transformation. Clients start appearing who are easier to work with and pay better rates. Business opportunities emerge that align perfectly with natural talents rather than requiring you to become someone you're not. Income begins flowing through channels that feel sustainable and enjoyable rather than depleting and stressful. What's particularly beautiful about this transformation is how it affects not just your financial results, but your entire quality of life. When you stop believing that money requires suffering to deserve it, you begin experiencing abundance as a natural expression of joy rather than a hard-earned reward for enduring pain. Your relationship with prosperity becomes celebratory rather than burdensome, expansive rather than contractive. Now, I want to explore how this harmony-based approach naturally leads you into what Florence Scovel Shinn called working under grace, because understanding this elevated mode of operation will show you how abundance can become as natural and effortless as breathing. When you observe harmony instead of hustle, when you feel that fundamental shift occurring in how you approach money-making and move from force into divine flow, you're ready to tackle one of the most deeply embedded beliefs that keeps people trapped in financial struggle despite their spiritual understanding. This belief is so woven into the fabric of how most people think about prosperity that they don't even recognize it as a limitation. It's the earn it mentality that must be completely canceled from your vocabulary and consciousness. The phrase, "I earn it," represents one of the most spiritually destructive concepts ever imposed on human consciousness around abundance. This language implies that money is a reward given by external authorities for good behavior, hard work, or sufficient suffering. It suggests that prosperity must be justified through human effort rather than received through divine inheritance. It creates the exhausting dynamic where you're constantly trying to prove your worthiness to an economic system that operates according to completely different principles than spiritual law. Behind the scenes of this earning mentality lies a profound misunderstanding of your true relationship to abundance. Money is not earned through human performance, any more than sunlight is earned by flowers or gravity is earned by planets. Money is permitted to flow into your experience when your consciousness aligns with the spiritual laws that govern prosperity. It's not achieved through strategic manipulation, but received through vibrational harmony with divine abundance. The transformation that occurs when you completely eliminate earning language from your mental vocabulary creates immediate relief from the pressure and anxiety that accompanies most people's financial efforts. Instead of feeling like you must constantly justify your desire for money or prove your worthiness through sacrifice and struggle, you begin to recognize abundance as your natural, spiritual inheritance that flows freely when you stop blocking it with limitation beliefs. This shift from earning to permitting naturally leads you to one of the most powerful declarations in all of abundance work, a statement so transformative that it literally rewires your nervous system around money when spoken with genuine conviction and consistent repetition. The declaration is simple but revolutionary. Money is obedient. I am the voice it obeys. The hidden power of this specific declaration lies in how it reverses the master-servant relationship that most people have unconsciously established with money. Instead of seeing yourself as money's servant who must work hard to earn its approval, you begin to recognize money as your obedient servant that naturally responds to your spiritual authority when exercised with genuine faith and consistency. The journey of declaring money's obedience until your nervous system truly believes it creates what can only be described as a complete personality transplant around financial matters. Your voice naturally deepens when you speak about money because you're no longer pleading from a position of perceived powerlessness. Your decisions become more decisive because you're operating from spiritual authority rather than human anxiety. Your expectations shift from hoping money might come to knowing it must respond to proper spiritual command. What's particularly powerful about this declaration is how it systematically overwrites every groove of hard labor, thinking that has been carved into your consciousness through years of cultural conditioning. Each time you speak, money is obedient. I am the voice it obeys, with genuine conviction. You're literally reprogramming your subconscious mind to expect financial flow through grace rather than through grinding effort. The impact of this nervous system reprogramming extends far beyond your relationship with money itself. It transforms how you approach opportunities, negotiate agreements, make investments, and even handle routine financial tasks like paying bills or checking account balances. Instead of these activities triggering anxiety and limitation thinking, They begin to feel like natural expressions of your spiritual authority over material substance. Now, I want to explore how this obedience declaration creates compound effects that build momentum over time, because understanding how spiritual authority grows stronger with consistent use will inspire you to maintain this practice even when immediate results aren't immediately visible in your bank account. When you feel that shift from earning mentality to receiving consciousness, when money begins to obey your voice through consistent declaration and spiritual authority, you arrive at perhaps the most liberating moment in this entire transformation, the opportunity to consciously burn every old contract you've unconsciously signed with struggle, fear, and financial limitation. Behind the scenes of your abundance journey lies a collection of invisible agreements that have been governing your financial experience without your conscious awareness. These aren't formal documents, but energetic contracts written in the sweat of exhaustion, signed with the ink of anxiety, and renewed daily through patterns of thought and speech that reinforce scarcity rather than abundance. Every time you've said, "Money is hard to make," you've renewed your contract with difficulty. Every moment you've chosen worry over trust, you've signed another term of service with financial stress. The visualization that transforms everything is simple but profound. See yourself standing before a great fireplace where flames of divine love burn with purifying intensity. In your hands, you hold that old contract written in sweat and fear, covered with clauses about having to work harder, earn more, prove your worthiness, and sacrifice your peace for financial security. This contract has bound you to experiences of limitation, not because these experiences were divinely ordained, but because your consciousness agreed to them through unconscious repetition of scarcity-based thoughts and words. The hidden power of this burning ceremony lies in what replaces the old agreement. As you watch those limiting contracts dissolve into ash and smoke, as you feel the weight of impossible terms and exhausting conditions lifting from your consciousness, you begin to speak a new covenant that rewrites your entire relationship with abundance. With the authority of someone who has remembered their divine nature, you declare, "I now sign my name to ease and overflow." This new covenant represents a complete reversal of everything the old contract demanded. Instead of signing up for struggle, you're committing to ease. Instead of agreeing to scarcity, you're choosing overflow. Instead of accepting limitation as normal, you're establishing abundance as your new baseline. Expectation. This isn't wishful thinking. This is conscious choice about which spiritual laws you'll allow to govern your experience. The transformation that occurs when you truly burn these old contracts and sign the new covenant creates what can only be described as a complete identity upgrade around your relationship to divine supply. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must seek, chase, and hope for abundance, and you begin to recognize yourself as someone who hosts, channels, and distributes the wealth of divine intelligence through your elevated consciousness. This identity shift reveals one of the most profound recognitions in all of spiritual development. You are not the seeker standing outside the gates of prosperity, hoping someone will notice your need and throw you some scraps of abundance. You are the sender, the one through whom divine supply moves into the world. You are not begging at the gates of provision. You are the gate itself, the opening through which heaven pours its resources into earthly experience. The impact of rising into this sender consciousness transforms every aspect of how you move through financial situations. Instead of approaching opportunities with the energy of, "Please choose me," you begin to evaluate them with the discernment of, "Is this worthy of my divine gifts?" Instead of wondering if you deserve abundance, you start asking how abundance wants to flow through you for the highest good of all concerned. What's particularly powerful about recognizing yourself as the gate rather than the seeker is how it eliminates the desperation and neediness that actually repel abundance. When you know you are the channel through which divine wealth flows, when you understand that supply moves through you rather than to you, your entire energy field shifts from contracted neediness to expansive generosity. Now, I want to explore how this gate consciousness transforms not just your internal experience, but your external interactions with people, opportunities, and financial decisions, because understanding how to operate as a channel for divine supply will revolutionize every aspect of your abundance experience. When you recognize yourself as the gate of abundance, when you feel that profound identity shift occurring as you step into your role as the channel through which divine wealth flows, you're ready to make perhaps the most empowering transformation in all of spiritual development around prosperity. The complete shift from asking to authorizing in every aspect of your financial life. This isn't just a change in vocabulary or a subtle adjustment in how you phrase your desires. This represents a fundamental elevation in consciousness from the position of spiritual beggar to the role of divine administrator. When you truly make this shift, you stop approaching abundance with the energy of, "Please give me what I need," and begin operating with the authority of, "I now authorize the release of what's already mine." Behind the scenes of this asking to authorizing transformation lies one of the most profound recognitions available to human consciousness. You were never designed to plead for what belongs to you by divine inheritance. Every time you ask for abundance as if you might be denied, every moment you approach prosperity with uncertainty about whether you deserve it, you're unconsciously diminishing your spiritual authority and operating from a false identity of separation from your source. The declaration that changes everything is both simple and revolutionary. I no longer ask, I authorize. But this isn't just different wording for the same old hoping and wishing. This is a complete reversal of your relationship to divine supply. When you authorize rather than ask, you're speaking from heaven rather than from hunger, operating as an oracle of divine law rather than responding to the mood of your bank balance. The hidden power of this authorization shift reveals why some people's abundance affirmations seem to carry immediate weight while others feel hollow, despite similar words. It's not just what you say, it's the spiritual position from which you're speaking. When you ask, you're implying that someone else has the power to grant or deny your good. When you authorize, you're recognizing that divine law has already established your abundance, and you're simply releasing what's been held in spiritual escrow. This transformation in spiritual position naturally leads to a complete elevation in how your voice carries authority when you speak about financial matters. Your voice must begin to reflect what Florence Scovel Shinn called divine certainty, the same unshakable confidence that Jesus demonstrated when he said, "Peace be still," to the raging storm, and the wind and waves immediately obeyed his command. The journey of developing this divine certainty in your voice often surprises people because it doesn't require years of spiritual training or complex techniques. It emerges naturally when you truly understand that you are made in the image of spoken authority, that the same creative word power that formed galaxies and established natural laws operates through your consciousness when it's aligned with divine truth rather than human limitation. What's particularly transformative about speaking with divine certainty is how it affects not just your inner confidence, but how external circumstances respond to your declarations. When your voice carries the frequency of absolute spiritual authority, when you speak from the recognition that you are authorized to command rather than obligated to beg, money begins responding to your words with the same obedience that natural forces showed to Christ's commands. The impact of this voice transformation extends into every conversation, every negotiation, every financial decision you encounter. Instead of asking if someone might consider paying you what you're worth, you begin stating with quiet authority what your services cost. Instead of wondering if opportunities might come your way, you start declaring that perfect opportunities must align with divine timing. Instead of hoping abundance will notice you, you begin authorizing its immediate release into your experience. Now I want to explore how this divine certainty creates what can only be described as magnetic authority that draws people, resources, and opportunities into your orbit without any effort or manipulation on your part. Because understanding this attraction principle will show you how spiritual authority naturally creates material abundance. When you speak with divine certainty, when you feel that shift from asking to authorizing, occurring in your consciousness as you recognize your true spiritual position as one made in the image of spoken authority. You discover something that will revolutionize not just how you think about money, but how you speak about your entire financial reality on a daily basis. Most people have unconsciously trained themselves to echo the contents of their bank account rather than the contents of the kingdom. They wake up each morning and immediately begin reporting lack instead of law, quoting their expenses instead of their inheritance, describing their limitations instead of declaring their divine provisions. This pattern of echoing scarcity creates a feedback loop that reinforces the very conditions they're trying to escape. Behind the scenes of this echoing pattern lies one of the most subtle yet powerful forms of self-sabotage in abundance work. Every time you speak your current financial circumstances as if they represent permanent truth, every moment you describe your bank balance as if it defines your worth or potential, you're unconsciously programming your subconscious mind to accept limitation as your identity, rather than temporary appearance that can be transformed through spiritual authority. The transformation that changes. Everything is learning to stop being a reporter for your bank account and start being an oracle for the kingdom. Instead of saying, "I only have $50, you begin declaring, "Divine supply is unlimited, and I am its perfect channel." Instead of complaining about bills and expenses, you start proclaiming the abundance that flows through every transaction. Instead of discussing what you lack, you begin describing what you're authorized to receive. This shift from reporting appearances to declaring truth naturally leads you to one of the most empowering recognitions in all of financial transformation. The understanding that you are not applying for money like some hopeful candidate waiting to be selected by external authorities. You are appointing money to flow into your experience through your spiritual authority as a divine heir with unlimited inheritance. The declaration that establishes this new relationship is profound in its simplicity. I am not applying for money. I am appointing it. This isn't just different language. This is a complete reversal of your position in the cosmic hierarchy. You are not the applicant hoping to be chosen. You are the appointer with authority to summon. You are not supplicating for favor. You are commanding obedience from divine substance that recognizes your voice as its proper director. The hidden power of this appointing consciousness creates what can only be described as magnetic authority that draws financial opportunities, resources, and support into your experience without any effort or manipulation on your part. When you truly understand that you appoint rather than apply, when you operate from the recognition that money awaits your authorization rather than your application, your entire energy field shifts from contracted neediness to expansive command. The impact of this transformation extends into every financial interaction you encounter. Your negotiations become more confident because you're not trying to convince someone to give you what you need. You're discerning whether they're worthy to receive what you're authorized to distribute. Your business conversations flow with greater ease because you're not hoping to be selected but evaluating alignment with your divine assignments. Your investment decisions become more intuitive because you're operating from spiritual wisdom rather than anxious calculation. What's particularly powerful about recognizing yourself as the appointer rather than the applicant is how it eliminates the emotional desperation that repels abundance while creating the magnetic certainty that attracts it effortlessly. People respond differently to your energy when you approach them from divine authority rather than human neediness. Opportunities align more synchronously when you're operating from spiritual appointment rather than material application. The journey of embodying this appointing consciousness often surprises people with how quickly external circumstances begin to mirror internal transformation. Doors that seemed permanently closed begin to open with mysterious ease. Resources that appeared unavailable start flowing from unexpected directions. People who were previously unresponsive suddenly become remarkably helpful and generous. Now I want to explore how this magnetic authority creates specific changes in how people respond to your presence and proposals. Because understanding the energetic effects of operating from divine Appointment rather than human application will show you why spiritual authority is the ultimate abundance multiplier. When you feel that shift from applying to appointing occurring in your consciousness, when you step into your role as divine administrator of unlimited supply, you discover something that will fundamentally transform how money responds to your very presence and voice. This isn't just about changing your mindset or improving your confidence. You're activating what can only be described as voice recognition in the spiritual realm, where money itself begins to identify and respond to the specific frequency of your spiritual authority. The declaration that establishes this recognition is both profound and practical. Money recognizes my voice. It does not hesitate when I speak. This isn't metaphorical language or wishful thinking. This is the actual mechanism by which divine substance learns to distinguish between commands spoken from genuine spiritual authority and requests uttered from desperate human need. Money, as crystallized divine intelligence, has the capacity to hear the faith frequency woven into your words and respond accordingly. Behind the scenes of this voice recognition process lies one of the most fascinating aspects of spiritual law: the recognition that money moves not because of external circumstances or market conditions, but because consciousness moves first. When you speak with genuine spiritual authority, when your words carry the unmistakable signature of divine certainty, money begins responding to your voice the way iron filings respond to a powerful magnet. It doesn't hesitate, analyze, or wait for better conditions. It moves because you move in consciousness first. The transformation that occurs when money begins recognizing your voice creates what can only be described as financial magnetism that operates beyond ordinary cause and effect. Opportunities start appearing that seem almost too perfectly timed to be coincidental. Resources begin flowing from directions you never could have planned or predicted. People begin offering exactly what you need before you even ask for it, because your energy field now broadcasts the frequency of someone whose voice money recognizes and obeys. This voice recognition naturally leads to the development of what Florence Scovel Shinn called commanding consciousness, the ability to speak increase into manifestation not through suggestion or begging, but as a rightful heir of divine abundance with legally authorized voice in the spiritual realm. The declaration that activates this authority is powerful in its directness. I command increase, and it obeys. The hidden truth about this commanding power reveals why some people can speak abundance into their experience, while others remain trapped in limitation despite similar words and intentions. It's not about the volume of your voice or the passion of your delivery. It's about the legal standing from which you speak. When you command as a rightful heir rather than request as a hopeful outsider, when you issue directives from your position as divine administrator rather than pleas from a position of spiritual poverty, the entire universe responds differently to your voice. The impact of developing this commanding consciousness transforms every aspect of your relationship with financial flow. Your business negotiations carry more weight because you're not hoping to be chosen. You're evaluating whether opportunities align with the increase you've already commanded. Your investment decisions become more intuitive because you're operating from the knowing that increase must manifest rather than the fear that it might not. Your daily money interactions flow with greater ease because you approach them from the confidence of someone whose commands are recognized and obeyed. What's particularly powerful about learning to command increase is how it eliminates the emotional turmoil that accompanies most people's abundance efforts. When you truly understand that your voice carries legal authority in the spiritual realm, when you recognize that increase must obey your properly spoken commands, you stop worrying about whether abundance will come and start preparing for how it will manifest. The journey of developing this commanding voice often surprises people with how natural it feels once they stop fighting their own spiritual authority. There's no strain or effort required to command increase when you're speaking from your true identity as a divine heir. It's as effortless as breathing because you're simply aligning with the way consciousness and substance were designed to interact from the beginning. Now, I want to explore how this commanding consciousness creates compound effects that build momentum over time. Because understanding how spiritual authority grows stronger through consistent use will inspire you to maintain these practices even when immediate results aren't visible in your external circumstances. When you feel that voice recognition activating in your consciousness, when you step into your authority as rightful heir with legally authorized voice in the realm of divine abundance, you discover perhaps the most liberating transformation in this entire journey, the complete shift from chasing abundance to consciously choosing it from your position as divine administrator of unlimited supply. The declaration that establishes this new relationship with prosperity is both simple and revolutionary. I am not chasing, I am choosing. This represents a fundamental elevation in consciousness from the energy of desperate pursuit to the calm authority of deliberate selection. When you truly embody this truth, you stop running after opportunities like someone trying to catch a bus that might leave without you, and you begin sitting in what can only be described as Dominion's seat, that inner throne of spiritual authority from which you consciously choose what belongs to you by divine inheritance. Behind the scenes of this chasing to choosing transformation lies one of the most profound recognitions available to human consciousness around abundance. You were never meant to scramble for scraps of prosperity or compete with others for limited resources. You were appointed to distribute overflow, not desperately seek sufficiency. Your role in the cosmic economy is that of spiritual administrator who selects from unlimited divine provision rather than anxious applicant hoping to be granted minimal survival needs. The impact of sitting in Dominion's seat transforms every aspect of how you approach financial opportunities and decisions. Instead of evaluating possibilities from the desperate question, will this save me from my limitations? You begin assessing them from the elevated question, does this align with the overflow I'm appointed to distribute? Instead of grasping at every chance for income because you fear scarcity, you start choosing only those opportunities that resonate with your highest purpose and greatest joy. This choosing consciousness naturally leads to the recognition of your ultimate financial authority, the understanding that your word, when aligned with spiritual truth, literally governs your wealth more powerfully than any external economic force or market condition. The declaration that establishes this governance is profound in its implications. My word governs my wealth. The hidden truth about this word governance principle reveals why some people remain prosperous even during economic downturns, while others struggle during boom times. It's not about external circumstances determining internal experience. It's about internal authority determining external reflection. When your aligned word builds the structure of expectation, assigns the flow of resources, and multiplies what already exists through spiritual command, no economic system has jurisdiction over your abundance. The transformation that occurs when you truly understand that your word governs your wealth creates what can only be described as financial sovereignty, the recognition that you are not subject to the economic opinions, market predictions, or financial limitations that seem to control other people's experiences. Your properly aligned word becomes the primary factor that determines what manifests in your financial reality. What's particularly powerful about word governance is how it operates, through what spiritual teachers call creative authority. Your aligned word doesn't just describe or hope for better financial conditions. It actually builds the energetic structure that determines what can and cannot appear in your experience. It assigns the flow of resources by establishing the vibrational pathways through which money moves toward you. It multiplies what exists by speaking increase over your current circumstances rather than limitation over your apparent lack. The journey of learning to govern wealth through aligned word often surprises people with how quickly external circumstances begin to mirror internal shifts in authority. Business relationships become more respectful because you're operating from sovereignty rather than neediness. Financial negotiations flow more smoothly because you're choosing from abundance rather than grasping from scarcity. Investment opportunities align more synchronously because your word is creating the structure that attracts perfect timing and ideal conditions. Now, I want to explore how this word governance creates what can only be described as prosperity immunity that protects your abundance from external economic turbulence. Because understanding how spiritual authority shields you from collective financial fear will show you why aligned consciousness is the ultimate financial security. When you feel that shift from chasing to choosing occurring in your consciousness, when you recognize your role as divine administrator who selects overflow from your position of spiritual sovereignty, you arrive at what can only be described as the sacred culmination of this entire transformation process. What you're experiencing is no longer just personal development or abundance work. This has become what Florence Scovel Shinn called spiritual engagement, a divine transaction occurring at the deepest levels of reality. Behind the scenes of this engagement lies the formation of what can only be described as an invisible covenant between your word and your world, between what you declare with spiritual authority and what dares to appear in your physical experience. This isn't a one-sided conversation where you speak into the void, hoping something might respond. This is a dynamic, living partnership between your aligned consciousness and the creative forces that shape material reality. The hidden truth about this spiritual engagement reveals why this work transcends ordinary manifestation techniques or positive thinking approaches. You're not trying to manipulate external circumstances through mental effort or emotional intensity. You're participating in the fundamental creative process that continuously shapes and reshapes reality according to the words spoken from genuine spiritual authority. Every declaration you make from this elevated consciousness becomes a binding agreement in the invisible realm that must manifest as visible form. This divine transaction operates according to principles that most people never discover because they remain trapped in purely human approaches to abundance. When you engage spiritually rather than just mentally, when your declarations carry the weight of divine covenant rather than the hope of human wishing, the entire universe responds as a co-creative partner rather than a resistant force that must be conquered or convinced. The transformation that occurs through this spiritual engagement creates what can only be described as complete identity fusion with your divine nature. You are no longer someone trying to become abundant. You recognize yourself as abundance itself, seeking expression through human form. You cease being a person hoping to manifest wealth. You embody wealth consciousness that naturally attracts its material reflection. This recognition leads you to what may be the most powerful declaration in all of spiritual literature, a statement so complete and so transformative that it serves as both resurrection, script, and scroll of dominion for anyone ready to claim their ultimate spiritual authority. The words are simple, but they carry the concentrated power of this entire journey. I am the formula. I overflow now. The profound truth embedded in this declaration reveals the deepest secret of abundance consciousness. You are not seeking a formula for prosperity that exists outside yourself. You are the formula. You are not hoping to eventually overflow with abundance. You overflow now because overflow is your essential nature when aligned with divine truth. You are not becoming someone who demonstrates spiritual law. You are the living demonstration of spiritual law in action. The impact of speaking these words with complete conviction creates what can only be described as instant identification with your highest spiritual identity. This isn't gradual growth or slow development. This is immediate recognition of what has always been true about your essential nature. The moment you declare, I am the formula, I overflow now, with genuine spiritual authority, every tomb of limitation that has held your consciousness captive begins to crack open. What's particularly powerful about this resurrection script is how it calls you forth from every form of spiritual death you may have unconsciously accepted. The death of dreaming big, the death of expecting miracles, the death of believing in your own divine worth. This declaration doesn't just change your circumstances, it resurrects your true identity from beneath layers of learned limitation and false humility. Now, I want to explore how this complete formula recognition transforms you into what can only be described as a walking demonstration of abundance law. Because understanding how to carry this overflow consciousness into your daily interactions will show you how to become a living testament to the power of aligned spiritual authority. When you recognize yourself as the formula of abundance, when you feel that complete identification with your divine nature occurring as the living demonstration of overflow rather than someone seeking it from outside sources, you've just completed one of the most profound spiritual journeys available to human consciousness. If you've stayed with me through this entire transformation, if you've felt these shifts occurring in your awareness as we've moved from burden releasing to gate opening to voice recognition to spiritual sovereignty, then something tells me this message was specifically meant for you at this exact moment in your life. The fact that you're still here, that you've absorbed these teachings about sleep programming and abundance consciousness, suggests that your soul was ready for this level of spiritual authority. I create these videos because I know there are people like you out there, souls who are ready to move beyond ordinary approaches to abundance and step into the profound spiritual laws that govern true prosperity. If this content has stirred something in you, if you felt that inner knowing that says, yes, this is how abundance really works, then I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. This isn't just spiritual entertainment. This is practical mysticism that can transform your entire financial reality when applied consistently. And if you've made it all the way to this moment, if you've journeyed with me from the very beginning through to this recognition of yourself as the abundance formula, write in the comments, I am the living formula. Because I want to acknowledge those who went the distance, who stayed present for the complete transmission rather than just sampling pieces here and there. The connection we've built over these minutes together, the way these teachings have landed in your consciousness, tells me that a simple like on this video would help this message reach other souls who are ready for the same awakening. There's something beautiful about knowing that your engagement helps expand the circle of people discovering their divine authority over abundance. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the practical application of these principles in your daily life. It's the perfect continuation of what we've explored together, showing you exactly how to maintain this formula consciousness when external circumstances try to pull you back into old patterns. Click and continue with me over there, because your abundance journey has only just begun.